The sky over Korea in the summer of 1950 bleeds red with the sunset. Black smoke rises from destroyed cities while American aircraft fly over barren mountains. At Itazuki Air Base in Japan, a man dons his pilot's uniform for the first time in 5 years. His name is Hiroshi Nakamura, and he is about to fly to save a country that his own people once invaded. The Korean War began 3 months ago with an unexpected invasion from the north. The United States, still celebrating its victory over Japan, finds itself in conflict once again. But this time, it needs unexpected help. It needs the pilots who were once its mortal enemies. Hiroshi is 43 years old. His eyes have known death since before he learned to fly. During World War II, he piloted Mitsubishi Zero fighters, experiencing glory, destruction, and finally, humiliating surrender. Like many of his countrymen, he spent the last 5 years under American occupation, under suspicion, watched with distrust. He was a ghost walking among the rubble of his defeated nation. Now, in 1950, necessity changes perceptions. The American Army is asking Japanese war veterans to serve as technical consultants. More than that, it is asking some to fly again. For the Americans, it is military pragmatism. For Japanese like Hiroshi, it is a chance at redemption, an opportunity to prove they are not merely old enemies, but can be loyal allies. The letter arrives in his hand one gray morning, delivered by a young American soldier who looks at Hiroshi with a mixture of curiosity and caution. The words are formal, written in careful Japanese by someone who understands the language but not the culture. They ask Hiroshi Nakamura to report to Itazuki Air Base within 7 days. They ask him to bring his flying experience. They ask him to consider serving the United States military in a capacity that has never been tried before. Hiroshi reads the letter 3 times. He shows it to his sister, Yuki, who lives with him in a small house in the outskirts of Tokyo. Their parents are dead. Their brother died in the war. The house itself was rebuilt after being reduced to ashes in 1945. Yuki's hands tremble as she reads. "They want you to fly again," she asks, her voice uncertain. "They want me to fly for them," corrects Hiroshi. "That is different." "It is insanity," says Yuki. 5 years ago you were dropping bombs on them. Now they want you to fly their machines. 5 years ago I was a soldier following orders, Hiroshi replies. Now I am a man looking for purpose. Perhaps this is it. Yuki does not understand. Neither does she disapprove. She simply holds the letter and looks at her brother with eyes that have seen too much tragedy to be surprised by anything. Hiroshi arrives at Itazuki Air Base on a humid afternoon in late June 1950. The base is alive with activity in a way he has not seen since before the surrender. American mechanics and Japanese workers swarm over the tarmac. Aircraft are being refueled, armed and prepared for flight operations. The control tower stands tall against the sky, and the runways stretch out like highways to the heavens. Major Robert Harrison, commanding officer of the fighter wing, greets Hiroshi in his office. Harrison is a man of 50 years with eyes that speak of having seen too much. During the war, he flew fighter aircraft in Europe. He flew against the Luftwaffe. He knows what it is to look death in the face and continue flying. When his superiors tell him that a group of veteran Japanese pilots will be integrated into the wing, his first instinct is to refuse. But then he thinks of numbers. He thinks of how badly he needs every available pilot to cover the airspace over Korea. "Nakamura," Harrison begins, studying the Japanese pilot across his desk. "I want to be frank with you. Many of my men lost friends and comrades to Japanese pilots. Some of them lost family members at Pearl Harbor. The fact that you are here will not sit well with everyone." Hiroshi nods slowly, absorbing this information. "However," continues Harrison, "we need you. We need your experience, your skills, and your understanding of aerial combat. I am not asking you to be American. I am asking you to be a professional pilot in service of something larger than national pride. Can you do that?" "Yes, Major," responds Hiroshi without hesitation. "I have flown for Japan. I have seen what national pride costs. If I can fly now for something other than conquest, then I will." Harrison studies him for a moment longer, then extends his hand. Hiroshi shakes it, and in that gesture, something shifts. The handshake is not forgiveness. It is not even full acceptance. But it is recognition. It is the beginning of something that neither man fully understands, but both are willing to try. The queue of pilots at Itazuki Air Base includes 7 men in total. Besides Hiroshi, there is Tetsuo Yamamoto, who piloted interceptor fighters. There is Kenji Asada, who survived napalm attacks against aviation facilities. There is Noboru Shigeru, who lost 2 fingers in an emergency landing, but can still fly with remarkable precision. There is Saburo Katsuta, a taciturn man who rarely speaks, but whose skills with an aircraft are legendary among those who know him. There is Yoshiro Machida, the youngest of the group at 38, who still carries the idealism of a man who believes in second chances. There is Masaru Horikoshi, an engineer as well as a pilot, who understands the mechanics of aircraft as well as any man alive. And there is Takeshi Ida, whose gentle demeanor hides the reflexes of a man who survived more than 50 combat missions. Each one of them has a story. Each one of them carries scars, both visible and invisible, and each one of them has had to make the most difficult decision of his life, to serve the country that destroyed their nation. The training begins before dawn in early July 1950. The American instructors watch these men with a mixture of admiration and suspicion. They know that these Japanese pilots know combat. They know that many of them shot down American aircraft during the war. They know that some of them were responsible for the deaths of comrades. It is a strange and tense configuration, but the Cold War leaves little room for luxuries like prolonged resentment. Hiroshi proves to be an excellent Sabre pilot from his first flight. His understanding of aerodynamics, his patience with equipment, his calculated courage rather than adventurous abandon. He would fly 68 training missions during his first week alone. His movements through the sky are fluid, almost like dancing around the maneuvers that the instructors propose. A young American lieutenant named Chuck Bradley watches from a tower, seeing Hiroshi execute a perfect loop, followed by a vertical barrel roll that extricate him from a simulated pursuit scenario. "Was this guy flying Zeros?" Bradley asks his commander. "Many of them," replies the commander. "He's too good to have lost the war," comments Bradley. "Wars are not lost by bad pilots, Lieutenant. They are lost by economies, politics, and accumulated technology." Nakamura here is a reminder that hunger and bravery cannot overcome numbers and fuel. The weeks pass. July gives way to August. The news from Korea worsens. American soldiers are forced to retreat, forming a precarious defensive line around the port city of Busan. The air is thick with urgency now. This is no longer about conceptual training. It is about survival. It is about not having enough pilots. Hiroshi is summoned to a meeting with Major Harrison on August 15th. Entering the room, he feels the weight of American eyes upon him. A dozen military personnel, mostly high-ranking officers, are gathered. Some look skeptical. 1 or 2 look hostile. "Pilot Nakamura," begins Major Harrison, "your qualifications and performance have made you eligible for a special mission. It will not be easy. It will not be safe. You will be one of the first World War II veteran pilots to fly in combat against a communist enemy." Hiroshi stands at attention. His uniform still appears new, pressed just hours ago. "What the Major neglected to mention," continues a silver-haired colonel, "is that many Americans will not be happy with this decision. Friends of theirs may die at the hands of officers who were once enemies of theirs. You understand the moral responsibility of this?" "Colonel," responds Hiroshi with a soft but clearly audible accent, "I understand that many Americans died because of decisions made by my pilots. I flew against your machines. I fired upon your comrades. Now I can help protect your nation against a communist threat. There is no true redemption in this world, only opportunities to do less harm. I ask for that opportunity." There is silence in the room. The colonel studies Hiroshi for a long moment. Then he nods. "You fly," he says simply, "and you better be good." Hiroshi flies his first combat mission on August 17, 1950. It is a reconnaissance mission, sweeping the airspace between the front lines and the Yalu River. Overcoming fear is always the first part of any mission. Hiroshi has always known this. During the war, when he flew Zero fighters against the American Navy, fear was his constant companion. He learned to befriend fear, to use it as a tool rather than allow it to become a barrier. The F-86 Sabre beneath his fingers is a living machine. He feels every movement in his hands, in his stomach, in his reflexes. The horizon stretches beneath him, green and brown, interrupted by the scars of war, burned-out villages, bomb craters, abandoned military routes. For 30 minutes, nothing happens. Then, on the radio, the controller's voice. Possible bogey 10 o'clock, altitude 18,000 feet. You see it? Hiroshi sees it, a black dot against the pale blue sky. His heart accelerates. It could be anything. An enemy fighter, a bomber, a false radar reading. He banks the Sabre and begins to climb. The jet engines groan under the acceleration. His optical sight activates. Fingers touch the firing button, but do not press. Not yet. He needs to confirm. When he is 1,000 meters away, he sees clearly. It is a Soviet LA-7 fighter piloted by a communist. For the moment, Hiroshi turns his Sabre, moving away, maintaining visual contact. "I have visual on bogey," he reports over the radio, his voice surprisingly calm. "It is a LA-7 alone. I see no escort. I recommend engagement." "Authorized," comes the reply. "You are cleared to proceed." Hiroshi presses forward and to the right. His training as a Zero pilot made him an expert in aerial combat, in tight turns, in thinking in 3 dimensions. But the LA-7 is a Soviet aircraft, not an American fighter. Hiroshi knows its characteristics. He knows its weaknesses. He knows how a Zero behaved in combat, and how a LA-7 is similar and different. The dance begins. The LA-7 banks left. Hiroshi anticipates the move and is already there. The LA-7 reverses. Hiroshi follows. Seconds that feel like minutes. Minutes that feel like hours. Finally, Hiroshi has the enemy in his sight. A perfect turn into the enemy's rear quadrant. The weapons are armed. A moment of hesitation passes through him. This man, the pilot of the LA-7, is a soldier doing his duty, exactly as Hiroshi is doing now. But then he thinks of his American comrades in Korea. He thinks of Chuck Bradley, the young lieutenant who admired him from the tower. He thinks of all the reasons he is here. Hiroshi fires, 4 short bursts. The tracer rounds cut through the air. The LA-7 is hit, first in the wing, then in the fuselage. Orange flames burst from its engine. The aircraft begins to descend, its flight pattern becoming erratic. "Bogey is down," reports Hiroshi, his voice still calm, but now with an edge of something that might be satisfaction or remorse. Perhaps both. He follows the LA-7 as it falls. He sees the parachute open. The enemy pilot descends slowly toward territory controlled by the Soviets. Will he live? Will he be captured? Will he be executed? Hiroshi will never know. When he returns to Itazuki, he sees the Americans waiting for him. The entire fighter wing is assembled. There is a subdued celebration, a sense that something significant has happened. Hiroshi was the first veteran Japanese pilot to shoot down an enemy in combat since World War II. Major Harrison meets him as he climbs down from the Sabre's cockpit. "Good work up there," says the major. "It was nothing special," replies Hiroshi. "For us it was," says Harrison. "You proved a point. You proved that a man can change sides and still be effective, still be loyal. That means more than you can imagine." In the months that follow, the Japanese pilots go on mission after mission. Tetsuo Yamamoto shoots down a Yak-9 fighter. Kenji Asada protects American bombers attacking communist infantry. Noboru Shigeru, the man with the missing fingers, proves to be an expert in evasion, escaping from ambushes in Mig Alley with a skill that leaves the Americans in awe. But not everything is glory. In October, during a bombing protection mission, Tetsuo Yamamoto does not return. His last radio transmission is confused, cut off by static. His Sabre disappears over enemy territory. The Americans send a search and rescue team. They search for 2 days. They find nothing. Tetsuo Yamamoto becomes officially missing in action. Hiroshi feels the weight of this disappearance in a way he did not expect. Tetsuo was his fellow combat pilot. They flew together for months. They shared stories at night about their families. They laughed about the dreams they hoped to live after the war. Now Tetsuo is missing, and Hiroshi wonders if his sacrifice will be remembered, if his loyalty will be recognized, if America will be grateful to pilots who gave their lives for the cause. Major Harrison watches Hiroshi in the hangar on the night after Tetsuo's disappearance. "Are you thinking of quitting?" asks Harrison. "I am thinking about why I'm here," responds Hiroshi. "In the previous war, my fellow pilot Takeshi died beneath my wing. He caught fire over Iwo Jima. I saw his aircraft go down. I knew he was dead, but I continued flying because I had to continue flying. Now Tetsuo disappears, and again I continue here." "That is what pilots do," says Harrison. "They continue flying, they continue fighting, because the alternative is to allow your comrades to die without meaning." "Perhaps that is war," observes Hiroshi. "Men dying so that other men can die as well." Harrison does not disagree. He simply nods and places a hand on Hiroshi's shoulder. "Tetsuo is a hero now," he says. "You know that. He died protecting American men. He died as an ally. That is more than most people can claim. More than any of us could have expected 5 years ago." As 1950 transforms into 1951, the Japanese pilots become an integral part of the fighter wing. In reports, they are often referred to as technical consultants or liaison officers. But everyone knows what they really are. They are pilots. They are fighters. They are men willing to die for the same side that once bombed them into surrender. One particular incident marks a turning point in the story of these men. On a January morning, the wing receives word that their base will be the target of a major attack. The Communists have managed to assemble a significant force of bombers. The Americans need air cover on an unprecedented scale. Major Harrison enters the briefing room and everyone stands. "Gentlemen, this is big," he begins. "We are expecting at least 40 Russian bombers. That means we need every Sabre we have in the air. Every pilot is going to fly 2, maybe 3 missions today. You are going to run out of fuel, come back fast, refuel, and go back out. You are going to be more tired than you have ever been in your lives, and some of you will not come back." He pauses, letting that sink in. "The Japanese," he continues, looking directly at Hiroshi, Kenji, Noboru, and the others who remain. "You will fly alongside our best pilots. You will be an example to all of us of loyalty and courage. Because today, America is not only defended by Americans, she is defended by us, by all of us together." Hiroshi sees something new in Harrison's eyes at that moment. Not respect, exactly, but recognition, acceptance. The truth that all of them, regardless of their origin, are united in something larger than their nationalities. The aerial battle takes place on a hot morning. 38 North American Sabres, including the remaining 7 Japanese, take off toward the Soviets. The fog of initial confusion gives way to a state of flow during combat. In his Sabre, Hiroshi is simply a pilot. His hands move through the cockpit with memorized precision. His eyes sweep the sky for threats. His trigger finger fires in regular sequences. Noboru Shigeru, flying on Hiroshi's wing, shoots down 2 bombers. His pursuit technique, favored by the fact that his aircraft is slightly faster in certain configurations, proves devastating. Kenji Asada makes an impossible turn to avoid an enemy fighter and positions himself perfectly to shoot down his own pursuer. The battle lasts 45 minutes. When it ends, the combined American and Japanese Sabres have destroyed 23 enemy aircraft. 4 of the American pilots do not return. 2 of the Japanese pilots do not return either. The casualty rate is significant, but the base has been protected. The communist bombers did not reach the hangars. American defenses held. Hiroshi taxis to the hangar and sees Major Harrison waiting for him. "You did good work today," says Harrison. "We lost men," replies Hiroshi. "Yes," confirms Harrison. "We lost men. But if you had not been here, we would have lost more, much more." That night, there is a memorial in the base bar. The remaining 7 Japanese pilots stand as the names of the dead Americans are read. Then, the names of the 2 Japanese pilots who died are read. An American captain raises a glass. "To all the men who fell today, Americans and Japanese. They fell together. They died as brothers." Hiroshi raises his glass too. And he realizes that, for the first time since the previous war, he feels a sense of belonging that is not complicated by guilt. As the months pass, the story of the Japanese pilots spreads. Reporters visit the base, photographs are taken, stories are told of men who were once enemies and are now allies. The American media initially reacts with skepticism, then with curiosity, and eventually with admiration. There is an article in the New York Times titled, "From Foes to Allies, Japanese Aces Defend Freedom in Korea." There is an editorial in the Washington Post defending the integration of Japanese veterans. There are letters from Americans whose parents or relatives were killed by the Japanese Air Force during World War II, asking for understanding and forgiveness. Hiroshi receives a letter from a woman whose husband died at Pearl Harbor. She writes about her initial struggle to support the program of Japanese pilots. But after learning about Hiroshi and his fellow pilots, she understood something fundamental about redemption. She understood that peace does not mean forgetting the past. It means building a future despite it. In June 1951, after almost a year in combat, Hiroshi and his fellow pilots receive orders. They will no longer be combat pilots. They will be technical consultants, teaching new American pilots what they have learned in decades of aviation. For the first time, Hiroshi believes he can live beyond war. Hiroshi's service in the Korean War will continue until 1953, when an armistice is signed. He never becomes a household name. His story is not as dramatized as that of Clarence Gabreski or George Davis, but in military circles, among pilots who understand the reality of aerial combat, Hiroshi Nakamura is a silent legend. When he finally leaves Itazuki Air Base for the last time, Major Harrison is there to say goodbye. "What will you do now?" asks Harrison. "I will go home," replies Hiroshi. "I will go to Tokyo. I will search for anything that remains of my family, and I will try to live a life that does not involve shooting at men." As Hiroshi walks toward the bus that will take him off the base, he looks back once. The control towers, the hangars, the rows of Sabres gleaming in the sun. This will be his last look at aviation life, his last connection to war, whether the previous one or this one. The story of the Japanese pilots who fought for the United States in Korea is a story of redemption. It is a story of how men can change, how nations can reconcile, how loyalty is not determined by birth but by choice. After the war, Hiroshi never flies again. He will return to civilian life, working as a mechanical engineering instructor. His fellow pilots have similar stories of transition to peace. Some will return to Japan, others will remain at Itazuki Air Base as consultants. All of them will carry the invisible scars of combat and the invisible honor of having flown as allies. The truth is that their story was largely forgotten. History books focus on American aces and epic aerial battles in Mig Alley. They focus on technology, on casualty statistics, on strategic policy. They rarely mention the 7 or 8 veteran Japanese pilots who flew Sabres in defense of a nation that just years before had bombed their own. But for those who know this story, it represents something profound. It represents the possibility that even after destruction and death, there is room for reconciliation. There is room for working together. There is room for redemption. On a plaque located at Itazuki Air Base in Japan today, there is a brief mention of the pilots who served here during Korea. Their names are listed, their dates of service are recorded, and there is a brief tribute in both Japanese and English that reads, "To men who crossed the line between enemies and allies, to men who chose courage and loyalty above hatred, your memory will remain with us." That is the true victory of the story of Hiroshi Nakamura and his fellow pilots. Not the technology of their aircraft, not the body count of their enemies, but the human understanding they bring, the understanding that war creates enemies, but that peace can create brothers. When Hiroshi died in 1993 at the age of 86, he received honors from both Japan and the United States. His obituary briefly mentioned his participation in the Korean War, but those who knew him knew that this was only part of his story. It were the years of peace that followed that truly defined his legacy. The students he taught, the children he raised, the ordinary life he lived, quietly remembering the friends who did not return, the story of Hiroshi, of Kenji, of Noboru, and of all the pilots who chose to fly for their former enemies is a testament to the power of courage and redemption. It is a story that reminds us that war does not have to permanently define a people, that even in the darkest moments, there are opportunities to choose a different path. From enemies to allies, from combat to peace, from death to life. That is the story of the pilots who flew between worlds, connecting two peoples who learned, against all odds, to be one.